Hi, Jack.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, lovely to
Hi.
speak to you.
Lovely.
Congratulations on the movie to start with.
Thank you so
This is
much.
very much in the vein of sort of classic underdog Hollywood stories. Talk me through how this whole idea came about and what made you want to make it, really, as your first movie as well. As
Yeah, as
director.
the first film. I think I just had to wait for an idea to strike, really. And it goes sort of harkens back to my time working with Michael Pitt on Boardwalk Empire. I always remember him going, sort of punching sandbags in between takes and leaving to go to the boxing gym. And Michael has just the heart of a boxer through and through. He's one of those people who just like has taken a hell of a lot of knocks in his life and sometimes always gets back up. And I, I think I watched the Stanley Kubrick short film just about which was done in 1951. It was about Walter Cartier. It was a documentary about a boxer just on the day of a prize fight. Nothing exciting happens. It's just him leading up on that certain day, leading up to a bout at Madison Square Gardens. And I said, "Well, it's a really interesting premise, but what you just have to do is turn the screw and say, well, what if that day was his last day, and if he was the only person who knew that he was, conceivably going to die in the ring that night?" Uh, and then I asked myself that question, which was, well, if you only had a day, what would you do with that day? Who would you speak to? What would you say to them? And I took a lot of relationships or things, maybe regrets or certain things from my life. I had a lot of conversations with Michael, and I pieced together this sort of story, which I then went to pitch to my wife because my wife has absolutely zero interest in this business usually. And I usually think that's quite a good sounding board because you don't want somebody who's like all like up and knows everything. I just very lightly told her the outskirts of the story, and it brought tears to her eyes, and I felt like that was a good sign. So it set me off on the exploration of writing the script.
You mentioned there working with Michael on Boardwalk Empire, which I was an absolutely huge fan of,
Oh, how great!
just fantastic. And also you've managed to get in Steve,
Yeah.
Buscemi, and an array of other very respected actors. And I believe you've worked with the same production company that made The Irishman. So there is a lot of that going on. How was your experience working with those people, firstly in Broadwalk Empire and then bringing them onto this?
Well, I think Boardwalk. I always say it was the diving board for my entire career. I had the most unbelievable time. I loved it so much. I loved also playing that character, Richard Harrow, so much. It was such a human. There was such beauty behind it, and how well he was written, and what I get to sort of play with. I sort of said there was an elephant man quality to it. It's like someone with such a beautiful soul, but on the outside, you think of them as a monster. And that very much influenced the character of Michael in Mikey, which is I'm not a monster. It's from the outset, from the outside, what you've done. We can all make mistakes. We can still be good of, good of heart, good of soul. It's about one's direction in life. I had the most incredible experience making that show, and I've developed such great friendships that continue to this day. And as many people as there were in front of the camera, there were, double that behind the camera. We were in New York, so I asked every favor I possibly could on hands and knees. I was willing to beg and plead and make all the calls that you usually would put off because I believed in the film so much and I believed what we were going to make. And I think that's it's a real gift sometimes when you are in a position where you do believe heart and soul that we could go and make something that's not really being made much anymore, films like this. And they're the films that sort of influenced me and made me want to be a filmmaker and an actor and every part of it. So it was amazing that everybody showed up.
Mm. You made the decision to sort of film this in black and white, and by doing that, you've given it this kind of really sort of classic Hollywood quality, but like gritty classic Hollywood quality, can you talk me through the films that you really love from that era that made you want to sort of, I wouldn't say emulate, but pay homage to?
Homage. Oh God, the list is so extensive. I mean, it's funny. I always said it's not a boxing film; it's a film about a boxer. And maybe a great influence would probably be On the Waterfront, if I was to say something like that. Very much so, because it's not a boxing film; it's about a boxer. Um, I pretty much say anything Stanley Kubrick touched. Um, I think The Elephant Man would be the top of that list because it's what uh, made me understand about the goodness of human looking past something and being able to see inside somebody and seeing something so effervescent, so saintly, almost like an angel. And I look at this film as Mikey being this like Saint Michael, because it's about that moment of the penitent man. We all have regret. We all have done terrible things, but it's about how we proceed in life. It's about the goodness of our heart. And I think there's such a purity to this character that I think we're missing a little bit in cinema today. I think everything sort of seems like, how much can I shock you? How much can I, startle you? I feel we're moving further and further away about human connection and actually that we are ostensibly good. And I love showing goodness and that we can overcome our, you know, pitfalls as, we are flawed humans and we do make mistakes and we can do something terrible. By doing something terrible doesn't mean you have to be a terrible person, and this is a film that highlights that it's not about forgiveness isn't about the world, it's about the people that you care about. It's about the person to the right and left of me. It's I find, that was my great sort of, I think probably the saddest part to me in today's world is these films that literally influenced me to such a degree and made me want to go out there and actually do it myself. I find it very hard to pick those films for kids like who would have those same movies in today's world and make them want to go and make a movie. And that's sort of what I wanted to make. I hope my film can be a bit of an influence, like on somebody of that younger age who can watch a film and say, God, you know what? I want to go and make something that makes me feel like that. I want to go and make something that can change. So I love that we were able to go and actually do it.
You mentioned the Elephant Man there, and obviously we've just lost David Lynch, and just been such a stuff. And I think I don't remember ever seeing such a reaction for a death of a filmmaker before from people of every age. Were you a massive fan of his? And have you been inspired by his filmmaking as well in your own sort of acting or writing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think with Lynch, it's as much of a feeling that I remember seeing his films, which is such an amazing thing. Like, I remember the first time I saw Twin Peaks. I remember the first time I saw The Everman. I remember watching a film of his called The Straight Story, which is just, which is a beautiful, simple movie about a brother traveling cross country to see his brother on a lawnmower. I mean, like just that, the simplicity of it. Everybody always thinks of Lynch, the Mulholland Drives and the Blue Velvets and all these incredible films that he had such heart as well, and he was always so innovative. And when you watched a Lynch movie, going back to Eraserhead, it's like you always knew you'd seen something that was going to change cinema, that people will be able to reference from now on. And it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, one of the great filmmakers.
Yeah. Having done this, I mean, this is your first foray into making a movie as a director and a writer. What have you found it more challenging than, or for yourself than being an actor? Have you enjoyed it more than being in front of the camera?
Really good question. It's so different, and I've loved every second of it, to the point where Michael was trying to get me to come and play a character in the movie. And I said, well, I can't, because I find it all encompassing. When I'm doing a character, it's sort of my every second. It's my, every breath I take is like completely consumed by the thought of me doing this role. And I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted to be open, and I wanted to be available to everybody else. Whereas acting sometimes is from the inside out. Like I'm thinking about myself, my character, how I play in this film, my part. Whereas on the other side of the camera, I'm thinking about everybody else. I'm not thinking about myself. It's actually rather, when I say selfless, obviously we all have the same direction, but we all want to make the best film possible. But it's very much looking at the outside elements, not the inside elements. Obviously, they have to come from your heart. But I loved it. I loved every second of that. I really did. I thought that was it's the collaboration of working. I feel like being an actor has informed my directing in a very positive way, because it gave me insight into how to talk with actors. I felt as a writer, very much so, writing almost as those characters, each and every one. Like at one point I can be a 13-year-old girl, or I can be a 83-year-old man. It's like you're just trying to put yourself in all those different roles and trying to write it with such truth and honesty. And that's a really fun exploration anyway. But yeah, I really took to the directing part. I loved it so much. I can't tell you just how much I loved it.
Yeah, it just looked absolutely fantastic, beautifully
Oh,
shot, really. I'm just so happy to see that you and Michael are still very much friends, are still very much
that's
in
nice.
each other's lives after all these years. And yeah, congratulations again on the movie. And hope to see you in front and behind the camera again soon.
Oh, Linda, you're so kind. Thank you for saying that. Well, I'm so glad you enjoyed the film. And I feel like if the world was right, Michael would be walking away with an Oscar for his performance, because I think it's one of the most beautiful, tender, honest performances that's ever been caught on camera. And he deserved everything for it. And,
He's such a complex human being and wonderful actor, and I wish we could see him more in more films. But obviously,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Well, maybe we'll get to do some more together. So we'll see.
fabulous. Thank you so, so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Linda. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys!
Hey!